Hi guys, welcome back to part 7 of The Path to a New Edition, covering the D&D Next playtest packages which came out in 2012-2013, when Wizards of the Coast was sending out playtest packages to groups of players to test out what they were considering changing the rules from the less successful 4th edition to what has now become the mega successful 5th edition. Now, I have to start this one by admitting to I've been kind of lying. And I didn't know that, because I was saying that I was going to cover the 10 packages of the D&D Next, where it turns out there's only 9. I downloaded one of them twice and labelled it as something completely different the 8 years ago when I originally downloaded them, and I hadn't really looked through. I knew that Pack 6 and Pack 7 were very, very similar. It wasn't until I was doing the preparation to make this video that I realised they're absolutely identical. So I'm skipping on to what's in my archives as Pack 8, where there are some updates. But let's go over to the desktop and have a look. And so, my 6th attempt at recording this. I'm right into the evening now, many hours after I recorded that intro sequence you just saw. Because there were background noises, there were ice cream vans outside the window, all sorts of interruptions went on. And then when I finally got a recording I was happy with, I discovered that a software update had messed up the settings on my microphone and my voice sounded like a Dalek. I was totally distorted. So I've had to uninstall my microphone, reinstall it, and hopefully you can hear me clearly now. But anyway, this is Pack 7 of the D&D Next playtest update, and this came out on June the 7th, 2013. Now, this mainly updates the magic system. If we start reading here, this version of the D&D Next playtest focuses on changes in the how to play and spells documents, as well as on the introduction of the Gnome, Half-Elf and Half-Orc, although additional files, such as the classes and bestiary file, have been updated. The changes are limited to those necessary to bring the files in sync with the revised spells. And that's what they're aiming for in this one. They're looking to update the magic system. And that's really, really evident, because looking at the files they sent through, the backgrounds and skills, the character creation, the DM guidelines, magic items, and races sections were all identical. They're still all date stamped as the 20th of March 2013, so exactly the same ones they sent through in the last package. The rest of these are dated the 7th of June, so are more up to date. Also, the adventures they sent through have not been changed at all, so I'm not going to look at any of the old stuff. But continuing through with what changes they've made, let's have a look at the file here. So they explain how to use the material, the how to play document, the character creation, the DM's guidelines, the bestiary. They mention that the rules for gnomes, half-elves and half-orcs have been added as a new document called Additional Races. In the how to play, the abilities, the section on intelligence includes a revised list of lore as well as lists of languages. Movement, when you're prone, standing up now requires all your speed rather than just 5 feet of it. And we've clarified how to move using more than one speed. There's also clarifications for rules, such as rules for critical hits have been changed. Dodge action now imposes disadvantage on attackers and grants advantage on dexterity saves. Disengage action now lets you move half your speed, and lots of other little changes. But it's really hard to spot these. Continuing through, it mentions about the spells. The file contains many new spells. Every spell now has a range and a duration entry. Some spells also have a material components entry. So they're really going for the magic section here. Now, going across to the first file, the how to play. I actually loaded this up so I had this file on one screen. And I've got a multi-screen setup, which is why I keep looking away, because I'm looking at other screens. I brought up the one from the March pack, and I went through them, and they look identical. There may be numbers changed, but the wording, as far as I can tell, is absolutely identical. So they've just messed around with some of the numbers in here. And I guess these are heavily in the magic section towards the end here. We've got the magic section from page 21 through to 24. But apart from that, it looks exactly the same. They've really got down what they want 5th edition to be by this point. We've had lots of playtesting, we've had lots of surveys back, and we can see exactly what they were looking for. Carrying on to the additional races file, they've got the Gnome here. Now, the Gnome looks very familiar if you look at the 5th edition Player's Handbook. Although there's only the Forest Gnome rather than the Forest and Mountain Gnomes, I'm not really that familiar with gnomes, so I'm trying to prize the information out of memories here. But the Forest Gnome looks exactly the same. Oh, sorry, we've got the Rock Gnome here. And they have Tinker. Well, I recognise that from the Player's Handbook, because it allows you to create things like clockwork toys, fire starters, music boxes. So the gnomes, they've got a good hold on what they want to go into the Player's Handbook, especially in comparison to all the work they've done on the elves, halflings, dwarves and humans. However, the other two races they put in here, the half-elf and the half-orc, are really just sketched out. And I can almost understand that for half-elves. Because what we've got here is half-elf traits, the ability score modifier, your charisma increases by 1, as does the score for one other ability of your choice. You've got low light vision, you've got fey ancestry, keen senses, and it's got the list of languages you can choose from. Well, half-elves, they're a little bit elf, they're a little bit human, so the background stories are basically from those. You're making up what your character's background is yourself, because every half-elf's going to be different. But the half-orc really needs a bit more fleshing out, I would have thought. And this is just the briefest sketch of what a half-orc is. You've got the ability score adjustment, so starting strength increases by 2, starting con increases by 1. Got dark vision, menacing languages. Nothing else. Now, it's been a while since I've looked at the half-orc, but I do know they've got the ability, I can't remember what it's called, but they can take damage received. If it was going to reduce them to 0 hit points, they can modify that so it reduces them to 1 hit point instead. Every long rest, I think it works. So basically, once per day, they can avoid being knocked down and disabled and keep in the fight by reducing the damage to 1 instead of 0. And that's not even hinted at here. The orc is the barest sketch of a half-orc. I don't know why they've put it in at all. The classes section, again, going through it and comparing it to the last file, looks very, very similar. I really couldn't notice anything until we came to the wizard section at the end. But again, they are juggling with numbers. So page 45 onwards, it looks like they've changed some of the numbers around for spells. There's not a lot changed. Again, the specialities is very, very similar, except there is a lot of rewording going on for the specialities which are wizardly based. So we've got the Meta Magician here. That has been modified. The Hedge Magician's been changed very slightly. But things like Ambusher, Defender haven't been touched. And although I haven't looked through them, the feats will have been modified. They are slightly different. Bestiary, again, it's just been updated to take in effect of the new spell lists. And then finally we have the spell lists themselves. Now, as I said, they've added in the range and duration for every spell, and some now have material components. So the magic system's getting a lot more fleshed out. And that's what they were looking for in this version of the playtest. Because they've got a firm grasp on the basic rules, they're quite happy with what they're doing with the races and classes, they just want to flesh out the magic system. We are getting very close to 5th edition, we've only got 2 more playtest packages to go, and they will bring us right up to date. But anyway, for something which is only minorly changed from the last one, I think I've whittled on for quite long enough. So thank you very, very much for watching. And most of all, as always, you look after yourselves. And I'll catch you later. Bye now.